In the whispers of forgotten scrolls and the shadows of ancient temples, there exists a tale that few dare to speak aloud, a story of transformation so profound that reality itself recoiled from its telling. I speak of Abdul Alhazred, whose name even now causes the wise to tremble and the learned to avert their gaze. You may think you know of madness, dear listener, but true madness, the kind that seeps into your bones when you glimpse what lurks beyond the veil of stars, that is something altogether different. It comes not with a thunderous revelation, but in subtle verses penned by candlelight, in dreams that taste of ancient dust, in shadows that move when they should lie still. Before you hear of his fate, know this: there are things in this universe, vast, uncaring things, that take notice when mortals peer too deeply into their realm. They do not hate us, for hatred would require us to matter. No, they regard us as we might regard insects, with casual, elegant cruelty, savoring our desperate attempts to comprehend their infinite horror. This is the tale of a poet who dared to look beyond the boundaries of sanity, who walked willingly into the embrace of cosmic terror. From the sun-baked streets of Sana to the impossible geometries of lost Iram, from celebrated poet to herald of humanity's insignificance, his journey marks a path that none should follow, yet all must know. Listen well, but guard your mind, for knowledge once gained cannot be unknown. And as you shall learn, there are far worse fates than death in this vast, uncaring cosmos of ours. In the ancient streets of Sana, where whispers of forgotten lore echo through time immemorial, there dwelt a poet whose verses would herald mankind's glimpse into the unfathomable void. Abdul Alhazred, whose name now strikes terror into the hearts of those who dare speak it, began his descent into madness not with thunder, but with the subtle scratch of a pen upon parchment. I have studied extensively the fragments of his early works, those innocent verses that spoke of beauty and mysticism, before the taint of cosmic horror twisted his quill. His transformation from celebrated poet to seeker of forbidden knowledge was gradual, like the creeping shadows of dusk that inevitably surrender to the absolute darkness of night. The turning point, as scholars now whisper in hushed tones within lamp-lit libraries, came when Alhazred discovered certain ancient texts, their origins best left unspoken. The revelations contained within drove him from the relative safety of Sana into the embrace of antiquity's most accursed ruins. Through the crumbling remnants of Babylon he wandered, and then to Memphis, that ancient Egyptian capital where the death god Osiris once held sway. Among its temples and forbidden crypts, where hieroglyphic warnings spoke of nameless things sealed away by long-dead pharaohs. Each step carried him further from the realm of sanity. In the deepest chamber beneath Memphis's oldest temple, where even the servants of Osiris dared not tread, Alhazred found it, an archway carved with symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. As he traced their writhing forms with trembling fingers, reality sparked and cracked like thin ice over a bottomless pool. The void beyond reached for him with fingers of absolute darkness, and he fell through space that tasted like ancient salt and madness. When awareness returned, he found himself gasping on red sands under a sky that had never known Earth's sun. The air itself felt wrong in his lungs, thick with whispers that spoke of impossible geometries and truths that no human tongue was meant to shape. His shadow, when it fell across the crimson dunes, seemed to move independently, reaching towards something vast and unseen beyond the horizon. Days became years in that haunted waste, where time flowed like honey in winter, and the stars above formed patterns that spoke of things better left unsaid. The wind, that terrible knowing wind, carved away his humanity grain by grain, replacing it with understanding that burned behind his eyes like dying suns. And always, always the horizon beckoned with promises of knowledge that would remake him entirely. But it was in the vast emptiness of the Rub al Khali where Alhazred's fate was truly sealed. For 10 years, he dwelt in that crimson waste, where the wind's hollow cry, the dreaded Azif, speaks of things that lurk beyond the veil of reality. There, amidst the endless dunes that shift like the surface of a restless sea, he claimed to have found Iram, the city of pillars, a place where reality wore thin and things from outside pressed against the membrane of our world. In the geometrically impossible architecture of Iram, where angles bent in ways that wounded the mind, Alhazred encountered beings that defied sanity's grasp, vast formless entities that writhed between dimensions, whispered secrets into his dreams. The crawling chaos itself, they say, took interest in his quest for knowledge, appearing as a tall figure in flowing robes who spoke of truths that made Alhazred's ears bleed and his eyes weep shadows. In those cursed ruins, he communed with messengers of the great old ones, creatures that existed as living geometries, their forms constantly folding and unfolding like origami crafted from human nightmares. They showed him visions of cosmic horror, vast beings sleeping in dimensional pockets, waiting to reclaim what was once theirs. Through cracked pillars that seemed to pulse with an inner light, voices that existed as colors taught him words that human tongues were never meant to shape. In the deepest chambers of Iram, where the air itself seemed to breathe, Alhazred discovered ancient tablets that spoke of those who wait below, entities that existed before time itself took shape. Their emissaries, things of smoke and angles that hurt to look upon, guided his trembling hand as he transcribed knowledge that would later fill the cursed pages of his grimoire. When Alhazred emerged from the desert, he was no longer the poet of Sana'a. Indeed, he was barely recognizable as human. His skin had taken on a grayish, almost translucent quality, as if whatever essence made it living had been partly drained away. Beneath this pallid surface, observers swore they could sometimes glimpse shadowy movements, like dark water flowing through pale rivers. His eyes, once bright with poetic inspiration, had sunken deep into their sockets, and those who dared meet his gaze reported that his pupils had become vertical slits, like those of a serpent or something far worse. In Damascus, his trembling hands, now bearing strange stigmata that seemed to shift position when no one was looking directly at them, began the work that would doom him. His fingers had elongated unnaturally, the joints occasionally bending in ways that defied anatomical possibility as they scratched forbidden words onto parchment. The Necronomicon, that blasphemous tome, poured forth from his fevered mind like a festering wound, expelling its poison. As the years wore on, paranoia gripped him like a vice, while his transformation continued unabated. His teeth gradually fell out, replaced by things that resembled small black thorns. His tongue, when glimpsed during his increasingly rare moments of speech, appeared forked and seemed to move independently of his will. In the shadows of Damascus's winding streets, he saw movement where there should be none. In the whispers of the night wind, he heard voices speaking of his impending doom. Yet he could not stop his work. Or perhaps, more terrifyingly, something would not let him stop. Those who observed him in his final days reported that his shadow no longer matched his movements, and sometimes appeared to have too many limbs. The end, when it came, was both swift and horrifying. On a day when the sun hung high and merciless over Damascus, reality itself seemed to tear apart. Those in the marketplace told of how the air grew thick and oily, how sounds became muffled as if the world itself held its breath. Witnesses, those whose minds remained intact enough to speak of it, described how Alhazred's body began to twist and contort, his transformed flesh offering no resistance to the invisible forces that claimed him. His final screams, they say, came not from his thorned mouth, but from somewhere deep within his chest, in a voice that spoke no earthly language. His body, what little remained of it, seemed to collapse in upon itself, leaving behind only a viscous, iridescent fluid that evaporated into noxious vapors before the gathered crowd's horrified eyes. But death was not the end of Abdul Alhazred's legacy. His cursed masterpiece survived, its dark knowledge spreading like a cancer through the centuries. Even now, in the darkest corners of forbidden libraries, the Necronomicon waits, a testament to the price of seeking knowledge that mankind was never meant to possess. Those who study such matters know that Alhazred's fate was sealed not by his death in Damascus, but by his first step upon the path of forbidden knowledge. For there are things in this universe, vast, uncaring things, that do not tolerate mortal curiosity, and when they turn their gaze upon you, madness and destruction are sure to follow.